Greetings everyone, I'm Hoodie Angel. You know, I used to be super into Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, crazy obsessed. I eventually left after I got sick of the power creep and also just how much of a massive money sink it was. Ignore those amiibo. Still, I sometimes just get the urge to have a good old-fashioned duel. So today, we're taking a look at Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Duel Academy for the Game Boy Advance. That's it. That's the reason. I just really felt like playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. It's time to duel!
Background information. Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Duel Academy came out for Game Boy Advance in November 2005 in Japan and January 2006 for the US. Published by Konami, it's a game based off the events of the early first season of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX animated series, which in turn is based off the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG and a follow-up to the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga series by Kazuki Takahashi. For those unfamiliar with the TCG, or trading card game, players take turns summoning monsters, utilizing spells, and activating traps to reduce the opposing player's pool of 8,000 life points to 0. It can be complex, but you really don't need to understand it for this game, at least not at the start. It's over the top, strategic, and just a heck of a lot of fun. With that said, let's move on to today's game. Story and characters. The game opens with you being accepted to the prestigious Duel Academy, where you will live and study to become a top-ranked duelist ready for the pro circuit, and perhaps even the next bearer of the coveted title, King of Games. And here is our goal. That's it. Literally this, right here. Easy peasy. No saving the world or anything big. Just playing cards at school. My entire high school career prepped me for this. It has some minor events here and there that follow the anime, but it only covers like the first half of season 1, before it gets to the real plot stuff, which is actually kinda cool. It's nice and simple. Stick to just dueling. As you duel your way to the top of the school, you'll encounter such beloved characters from the anime like Jaden, Cyrus, Chaz, Alexis, Chumley, Dr. Crowder, this guy. Also, the game starts you in Slifer Red with Jaden, Cyrus, and Chumley, literally the bottom of the barrel. But if you study hard, you may even be able to pull yourself up from the lowly rank of Slifer Slacker. By the way, this is an outrage. You can tell by my very clearly official jacket that I belong among the upper echelon of duelists in the mighty Obelisk Blue. It's only because you made me use your terrible pre-made deck. Speaking of appearances, let's take a look at the way this game looks. Presentation. The dialogue, as well as selecting various locations, is rather bare bones. It's set up in the style of a visual novel with characters talking in turn. Not super exciting, but it gets the job done. And the art is quite nice. In duels, card sprites are a bit small. You can't tell what card is what just by looking at them, which is unfortunate. And the battlefield is rather bland. It makes up for that by having a little character narration, complete with headshots, occur at various times throughout the duel. It's still not the prettiest, but it works. Also, the close-up art of various cards is great for Game Boy Advance, looking accurate to their real-life counterparts. But who cares about all that? We're here for the duels. But what's a duel without an awesome soundtrack? Well, it'd be playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In my high school cafeteria. Not as cool. This game only has a few tracks. They're nice even on a loop, but more variety would be nice. The music changes based off if you have a life point lead, your opponent does, or if the game state is more or less neutral, which is a nice touch, adding a bit of flair and atmosphere to the duels, and breaking up the monotony. The other tracks for exploring outside, the card shop, and so on are likewise okay, and have the benefit of usually not looping too much since you'll usually only hear it briefly between duels. The presentation could be better, but it's not atrocious. Now, let's get into what really makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! The gameplay. Gameplay. The opening tutorial is long, and doesn't actually explain the game mechanics of actual Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead, it introduces you to various characters, the academy, card shop, and your goal. But once it's done, you're in business. Despite taking place at school, there's not much to classes. they'll only come up rarely, mostly for the monthly exams. For the most part, you don't need to worry about them, and the actual game is played on the weekends. In fact, the game literally says this. Cyrus explains how there's an exam each month to change dorms. We'll circle back to that, but that gives us a starting point. Cyrus also explains you'll receive a title based on how many duels you win, with best, and our eventual end goal, being King of Games, the top rated in the school. But my first goal is to reclaim my rightful place in the blue dorm, then we'll worry about titles. Actually, that's not true. Like I said, they didn't let me use my real deck and instead gave me this terrible random pile of cards. The only reason I'm in Slifer Red is because they refused to let me play Madolche. I would have TR Misu'd you into next week. Let's take a look at what they gave me instead. Yep. Interesting. Yeah, this is garbage. Totally called it. Change of plans. First goal, fix this mess. A great duelist can win with a deck like this, but it's an uphill battle. Naturally, I must have drawn like the worst cards in this deck during the entrance exam or something. Anyway, obviously, here we can edit our deck with various cards we've obtained. On the left is all the cards you own, and on the right is what's currently in the deck. Sparks? Meteor Dragon? Who plays this trash? Seriously, 1800 on a tribute monster is so low. There are normal summon monsters that can clash with that. We start with both Luster Dragon 1 and 2, who are both far better than this as a standalone monster or a tribute monster respectively. No reason to ever use this. And Legendary Flame Lord? Ha! Rituals won't be relevant for over a decade when Necros come out. Yeah, we need to fix this ASAP. At least there are some good cards in here, like Giant Trunade, Upstart Goblin, and Book of Moon to use as a base. If you don't know what a card does, you can press start to bring up a more detailed view. As we make our way to the card shop on the map, you'll also notice you can see who's where at any given time, which is great if you want to duel a certain character. We'll get to that in a minute. First, let's buy some cards. In order to buy cards, we'll need DP. And how do you get that? Winning duels, of course. Man, if it worked like that in real life, I'd have never quit. To start, we get 3000 DP, and you also get a monthly allowance based off how well you're doing in school. Obviously, this game has cards from around the era it came out, so unfortunately none of my favorites are here. You can buy multiple packs at once, up to the number available. No discount for buying in bulk though. You can press start to get a basic summary of what's available in that set, though the first sets are just general sets, so this help isn't that helpful. Instead, we'll go based off the cover card. In this case, Summoned Skull is probably the best of the available cards, being a solid 2,500 for one tribute. To put that in context, Yugi from the original series ace card, the Dark Magician, had the same attack but cost 2 tributes. As a standalone monster, Summoned Skull is just better. End of story. So let's open the pack. What are you gonna get? It's all the thrill of buying real cards but none of the crippling financial repercussions. Oof. Reminds me a little too much of my luck with packs in real life. Screw you, Komani! It took 2000 DP, but I managed to get Summoned Skull, along with 90% of the cards in this pack. He'll make a good boss monster for our deck, beating most threats, including Jinzo, which is king in this game. We also know not to continue buying cards from this pack since we have most of them. In fact, I also got some other cards like Hain and a set of Skelangels, which will make a nice base for the deck. The shop gets new packs on Tuesdays. If you buy all the packs before then, you need to wait. Also, they're closed on Sundays. Why would a card store at a school dedicated to dueling close? Ahem. At the beginning, the options for packs are limited, but they'll improve as you do. Now we can edit the deck up. Going back to the dorm and using the PDA, you can change the deck, and entering deck mode, you can see your list of decks. We have 3 terrible decks themed off of fire, water, and wind, as well as a static deck that has cards that will never be banned. Instead, I'm going to clear those first 3 and build from scratch. Most archetypes don't really exist yet, and the few that do, like Harpies and Elemental Heroes, aren't particularly outstanding. So, while limiting in terms of what you can do, it does make the decks you can build slightly more interesting than just tossing in like 3 of every card that shares a name and calling it a day. Just to give an idea for anyone new starting out, I'll go through my deck building process real quick. Since I didn't get a lot of good spells and traps from my packs, and most of the basic ones you start with are type specific, I'm building a heavy monster base, with some effect monsters like Skull Angel to draw, and Exiled Force Hane, Maneater Bug, and Penguin Soldier as monster removal. I also have some strong defenders like Giant Soldier of Stone and Mystical Elf, as well as good beaters like 7-Colored Fish and Spear Dragon. For big tribute monsters, I only have 2, both low-cost single tributes in Summon Skull and Cyber Tech Alligator, who both weigh in at 2,500 attack. Suck it, Dark Magician! Spells and traps are just standard versatile ones like Giant Trunade and Trap Hole. Not ideal, but it works. As you progress, you'll gain much better cards like Jinzo and Goblin Attack Force, and so on. But for now, this trash is what I've got. Eventually, you'll want multiple decks, especially for exams. They have various themes like gaining life, dealing damage, using spells, and so on, so having dedicated decks makes that easier. Still, part of the fun here is just trying to make a cool deck out of the hodgepodge of cards you end up with, instead of dropping hundreds of dollars on a pre-constructed autopilot deck. And sometimes it's fun to go back to basics, none of the newfangled mechanics. With our new deck built, we're finally ready to get our game on. First, we need to wander the island and find an opponent. However, based on your dorm and rank, some opponents may not be willing to accept your challenge. At the start, your fellow Slifer Reds are your best bet, with Jaden being the strongest. With that said, I have enough confidence in my abilities to take him down. The duel starts with a coin flip to determine turn order, and then you get to business. From here, it's basic no-frills Yu-Gi-Oh! If you know how to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, you know how to play this. Conversely, if you don't know how to play, there are some in-game tutorials that cover the basics of the game. The basics of 2005 Yu-Gi-Oh! Anyway. Too bad it still doesn't explain what Pot of Greed does.
And I activate the spell card Pot of Greed. This lets me draw 2 cards.
Thank you, Jaden. Some of the rules have changed since this game came out, and new mechanics added, but it's a really solid entry point thanks to its simplicity. No real background is needed for this. The game explains everything, which is perfect for beginners. It's also good to learn with because the AI isn't very smart. It's passable, not terribly smart, but enough to know not to suicide, about what you'd expect. I actually found this really helpful for learning things like timing and interactions with cards when I was still getting started. Just having that stuff automated can help, since it can be a bit tough. One thing that sucks though is if you have a quick play spell or a trap that can activate at any time, the game will constantly ask you about it. Ugh. At the end of the duel, you'll receive DP based on various factors, like how much damage you dealt. This includes total, even if it's more than they had life, so going for overkill is great. You also gain DP for achieving an alt win like Deck Out or Exodia. While most of these are unreliable in real life, save Exodia, alt win conditions are great here. Have you ever wanted to win with Destiny Board? Well, here you can, because I have watched the AI use Breaker the Magical Warrior to destroy a face down, allowing my Destiny Board to add a card and win me the game. Days are divided into morning, noon, and night, and during those times, characters move to different parts of the island, sometimes being unavailable. In addition, you can't buy from the shop at night. Essentially, you can go 3 places a day besides editing your deck in your room, which doesn't take time. Sometimes midweek various events will occur, though these are usually just for fun. Occasionally something actually important like a duel will happen, but it's rare. On weekends you can choose what to do, like go to the card shop or search for opponents at various locations around the island, or stay locked up in your room all day, just like real life. Actually, if you do that too much, the game forces you into a duel. That's right, the game is punishing me for being a neat. This'll teach you to mock my lifestyle. There are also timed puzzle duels. These are for exams. These are all pre-made and available to practice on. Some of them are actually a good challenge, more so than the AI usually presents. Speaking of, each month there are dorm switch exams. These include a multiple choice test on various cards, the aforementioned puzzle duels, and a straight up duel following a specific theme, such as using spells or inflicting damage and destroying monsters in battle. If you do well enough across all your exams and won enough duels, you can rank up to Raw Yellow and eventually even Obelisk Blue. And that's about everything to it. I really mean that, that's it. Keep at it and you too can become the next king of games. Finally, let's move to the end phase. Verdict. This game is another classic example of less is more, simplicity being good, and all that jazz. Like a Summoned Skull, it's not as flashy as some other cards, but it's simple and effective, almost elegant in its simplicity. Essentially, I enjoy it a lot. If you want to learn the more modern mechanics of the game, or play with fancy cards, or even just experience a more involved story, nearly any other Yu-Gi-Oh game, particularly the newer ones, will probably serve you better. But if you want to get back to basics in a time before archetypes were king with some old school dueling, this game should be right up your alley.
So that's Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Duel Academy. I had a lot of fun revisiting it and just playing some good old-fashioned simple Yu-Gi-Oh! Though I do miss some of my newer toys from the 5Ds and Zexal. Anyways, thank you both for indulging this little trip down memory lane, and for also, as always, watching this video. Until next time, this is Hoodie Angel Brandon, dropping out. Just kidding. Stay in school, kids. Seriously, don't drop out to play Yu-Gi-Oh! All day.